In this video series, I'm going to show you how to complete the roof practice assignment. We'll start by downloading this file. It's a Revit file with walls that match the house in these images, only there won't be any roof. I'll start in this video by showing you how to do some basic roof elements, such as a roof gable, a hip, a salt box, and even a shed roof. And then in the next video, I'll show you how to tackle everything that you see in this house, which is basically taking the basic elements and trying to apply them in a more complex way. So let's go ahead and get started. When you open up the Revit file, it should look like this. Over here, there's a few descriptions of what we need to do and how we can accomplish the house roof that'll look like the images that I pasted inside here. But to begin with, we want to do the four basics: hip, gable, shed, and salt box. Now to begin with, let's go to the internet and look at a couple pictures to show us the difference between a hip and a gable. This is a perfect house because it has both of them. See if you can identify which is which. Where's the hip? Where's the gable? The answer is that this is a gable and this is a hip. Two more gables over here, more hips over here, and a hip down here on the porch. Now let's explain what's really happening. In this case, you have your top of wall, which runs across here and then around the side, and then a roof going upward, and the wall has to somehow fill in a gap between the top of the wall and the ridge of the roof. So you always end up with this triangular shape. But again, this wall has to extend all the way up to meet the ridge or the top of the roof. Now over here, on the other hand, you can see the top of the wall, and it doesn't extend upward at all. Instead, the roof takes care of that job on all sides. And the only way that's accomplished is that you have your ridge, and then you'll have a slope going up on one side, a slope going up on another side, and you'll form what's kind of like another ridge here at the corner. But instead of it being a ridge, we call that a hip. The ridge is all the way at the top. This works its way up until it intersects with the top. Okay, and again, you can have that on all sides of a house. Or you can decide to extend the wall up to meet the ridge. Whenever you see the triangular shape, you know you're dealing with a gable. Okay, while we're talking about terms, let's just talk about a couple more. This picture shows a whole bunch of them, and I wouldn't focus on too many, but I do want to show the shed roof type, which is really just slope on one side. So we've got regular wall height here, and then we have to extend the wall height on the other side, and you can see it's just a single slope, very simple. And then here's the salt box, which is almost like a gable. Here's our gable. This is very similar with one difference. Here we have a one-story wall on both sides, and here we have a one-story wall on one side with a two-story wall on the other. We've raised up one side, we end up with a gable, but it's a little bit distorted. It's not a perfect triangle anymore. Okay, now let's go to just two more terms, and then we'll start modeling. So I want to make sure that you understand the difference between fascia and soffit. Now this whole thing that hangs past the wall is called an eave, or an overhang, and it's comprised of two things primarily, which are underneath the shingle, and that is the fascia, that's the front border, and then the soffit, which is the underside. Whenever you hang the roof past the wall, you have to have some material to cover the structure. And again, these are the two things we do it with: fascia and soffit. Now we can talk more about what those materials are and what they're made of. We'll do that later. Not for this video. Here's another example. Soffit on the underside, fascia on the face. That's one good way that you can remember this. Fascia is on the face. Soffit goes below. Okay, let's go ahead and start modeling now. In this video, all I'm going to do is model these four. And again, in the next video, we'll come back and we'll do the more complex roof types by using these walls and using a combination of everything that we learn over here to create that house. So here are the basics, and here is the application. Okay, let's get started. So on the hip, we want to go architecture, roof command. You should see a variety of roof styles that you can choose. Wood truss 6-inch asphalt shingle, that's the one that we want. And the reason that I use this one is because it gives me a 6-inch fascia. Normally houses might be built with a 4-inch truss, but then you're stuck with a 4-inch fascia. And in the real world, that's not a problem. In Revit, it kind of is. So we're just going to go ahead and use this to make everything simple. Okay, the next thing we want to do is get accustomed to using pick walls. This means that I don't have to draw the outline of my roof, because by using the pick walls tool, it'll simply create a line for me with a couple settings in mind. One of them is the overhang that we just talked about. I'm going to keep this at 1 foot. We'll use a 1 foot overhang, and you can see that the dashed line is pushing my roof out, or my eaves out 1 foot past the wall line. The next thing is that we always want to select extend to wall core. And that just has to do with how does the roof connect to the wall. And when we use this, it's going to connect in the spot that we want or intend to. And the last one would be define slope, which you only want to do in select places. So I'm going to start off by not using define slope, and I'll show you how to add it in later. I click everywhere that I have a wall that I want to use to generate a roof from. And what's just happened here is I've got a complete outline, which you have to have. There has to be a closed loop. And if I were to select this, two things would happen. When we go into 3D, one, you'd notice that the roof is up too high. And two, you'd notice that it's perfectly flat. And that's just because I never gave it any slope. I didn't define any slope. The reason that it's up too high is because we're working up here in the roof plan. And if you recall from most of the projects that we work with, the roof level is all the way up here. So roofs are always tied to a datum or a level. And in this case, we want our roof to be tied to this datum, top of wall, simply because that's the extent of our walls. They stop at the top of wall, so we want our roof to start at the top of wall. So all we have to do is select that roof and tell its base level to be top of wall, and you can see that now the roof touches the walls. Okay, I'm going to go back into my roof plan. I'm going to select my roof, and I can go back into edit mode either by double clicking on it or editing the footprint. And when I do that, I get the pink lines again, and now I'm ready to add slope. So I can select a line, and I can select define slope here or here. Both will do the same thing. I can even select 3 lines at once if I want and add slope everywhere. Every time I do this, I get this little symbol that shows that wherever this line is, the roof will start sloping upward from that edge. And in a hip roof, we would actually like every single edge to have slope to it. We can accept this, go into 3D, and now you can see what I mean. Every edge slopes upward, and we end up with all these hips at the corners. We also end up with a ridge just because one side happens to be longer than the other. At this point, we could leave things the way that they are, or we could play around with the slope. If I click on this and I see that the slope is already set to 912, I have the option to click on in that box, select the entire, select all that text. I have the option to click inside this box, select all the text, and then I can just type in any other number, like 6. Now it's a 612. Actually, you have to push enter. Now it's a 612. If I click on it again, I can tell it to be 412 or even as steep as a 1212. 1212 is interesting because it helps us understand slope the best, I think. When we're talking about slope, what we mean is for every 1 foot or 12 inches this direction, we're going to go 12 inches vertically, which means that a 1212 gives you a perfect 45-degree angle. We're going over 12, up 12. When I go with something half that, it would be a 612. That would mean that for every foot we go over, we're only going to go up 6 inches. So this is exactly half of a 45-degree slope. Okay, and then all the other numbers are just somewhere in between. Go down as low as 3, or back to 9 where we started. Okay, so let's go ahead and try this again, only this time we want to create a gable. So I'll go back into my roof plan. I'll go to my roof command, pick walls, and this time I know that I want some slope, so I'm going to go ahead and check this box initially before I start drawing. I'm also going to make a habit of selecting extend to wall core every time I create a roof. Okay, the two sides where I want slope would be here and here. The two sides that I don't want slope would be here and here. And once again, that means we'll get slope from this edge and this edge, which should create that triangular effect on both these two sides with a ridge running right down the middle. Let's see how we do. I'll go into 3D. Once again, my roof is up too high, and we can just tell that drop down to top of wall. And just like I thought, there's a great big opening over here, because remember, in a gable, the wall has to extend up to the roof. And in this case, it does not, or at least not yet. It's really easy to do this. All I have to do is use some of the Revit tools by clicking on this wall and telling this that I want to attach to top or base, which basically means if there's anything above the wall, we can attach to that to raise the wall up, and if there's anything below the wall, we can attach to that to drop the wall down. If I say attach to top and then I go click on the roof itself, then it knows it's supposed to take the top and attach to whatever's up above. We fill in the gap. Come over here to the other side and do it one more time. And now we have a true gable. Okay, one slight thing that I'll point out here is that we always end up with these little gaps. It might be kind of hard to see, but there's a teeny tiny little opening here. And the reason for that is because at every wall corner, one wall gets precedence. In this case, in this corner, this wall has the precedence. And if you go over to here to this corner, the gable wall has precedence. You can see because it extends all the way through. What that means is this wall was extended to the roof, whereas this one was not. So we end up with a little slight opening that we can fix by using this very same tool. Attach top, then click on the roof, and now it's filled in. You should have to do that twice, because once again over here, it's the gable wall with precedence, but over here, it's not. Go ahead and attach that, and we have ourselves our first gable roof. Pretty slick. Okay, let's go ahead and do the shed. And by now you've probably figured out that you really don't need to watch me do this, and you probably know how to do a shed roof all by yourself. I am going to show one thing though, and that is that when I create this roof, this time I'm going to actually change the base level before I get started. So it will automatically be down at the top of wall level. I also want to point out that you could just go to the top of wall level, open up that view, and you can start drawing here, and then we'll automatically tie it to that base level. The only reason I don't like this is because when you're finished, you don't see the entire roof. The vantage point isn't high enough to show you the ridges. You're not looking down from a high enough point, and so that's kind of why I like just using the roof plan to begin with. Anyways, I've got my base level set, and from this point it's going to be pretty easy. I'm going to define slope on one side, make sure you extend a wall core. You can pick whichever side you want. For me, I want it to be big and open on the front, so I want the slope to start back here. Okay, and then I'm going to deselect define slope. And when you do this, even though this time it is tied to the lower level like we want it to be, you can tell that that is a pretty steep slope for a shed type roof. I should change that. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to change that to maybe a 4. That looks a lot better. And of course we want to attach these walls. I'm going to attach every one of them up to that roof. Technically at this point you're done, but I'll show one more thing. You can always go back into a roof. You can double click on it, or you can hit edit footprint, and maybe you want more slope on one side, or maybe you want more overhang on one side. In this case, I'd like to have a great big overhang. Right now this is only a 1 foot overhang, but what if I had like a covered porch here? So I'm going to go up here to where it says 1, and I'm going to change that to 10, and you saw that the line is no longer very close to the wall edge. It extended all the way out here 10 feet. Let's go into, well, we're already here, 3D. Let's accept that. and this is what it would look like. And then maybe later on I'd come back and I'd put in columns or beams or something to help support that. But you can do that on any one of these eaves. You can have something bigger as opposed to just the 1 foot overhang. Okay, one thing to keep in mind is that, no. I don't want to say that. Okay, let's go ahead now and do the last one, which is the salt box. For the salt box, once again, we've got a high end and a low end. The first thing that you would need to know is what is the difference between the high and the low. And in an elevation view, we can see from our datums that the top of wall, which is the low end, is 9, and the roof is at 18. So, of course, doing the easy math, we've got a 9 foot difference. Okay, I'll go into my roof plan. I'll go into my roof command, and I want slope on 2 sides. So this is very similar to the gable that we did over here. And for right now, I'm not even going to bother with adjusting anything to make it a salt box. I'm just going to go ahead and create it as though it were a regular gable. So we have slope on this side, slope on this side, and then, whoops, those two weren't extended into the wall core, so I'm going to select those lines and then click on the box. Okay, let's try this again with pick walls, extend into wall core. I don't want slope on these 2 sides, so I'll deselect. And we're almost done. One more change that we have to make in order for it to be a salt box, and that is on the back side, which is this one. That's that lower wall back there. You can do this in 3D. It's kind of easier that way, but on this wall here, I need to be able to select it and tell that to have a plate offset from the base. In other words, it either needs to go up or down from the original starting point. And in this case, I want to go down 9 feet. So I'm going to plug in -9. Okay, nothing appears in the sketch. It doesn't look any different. But when I accept it, that's exactly what we wanted it to do. We got a lower starting point on the back than the front. And now I can do the same with my attach for both sides. And we've just now completed all 4 of our basic roof shapes. We're almost ready to jump to the next video where we can start the application. But before I do that, there's a couple more things that are going to better prepare you. Okay, one of them is that not all roofs have the same slope throughout. So if I go back over here to my hip, let's double click on this. If I click on this line, it says that it's an 812. In fact, the whole roof it shows as being 812. Here it shows the whole roof is 812. But when I click on one individual line, I can see that it also has the ability to have a slope adjustment. So if I click here and I say 4, just on that one side, what's going to happen is that there's no longer anything input here for slope. And that's because there's a variety of slopes at this point. I can click on them individually and see that they're all 8 except for this one. And when I click to accept this, I'm going to get a strange looking shape. Lower slope over here, 812 everywhere else. It pushes the ridge out. It just changes everything. And it does kind of a funny thing right here with my eaves. Okay, once again, the whole point of this is just to show that some roofs are going to have a variety of slopes, and when you do that, you click on it and you're no longer able to make adjustments here. Now back to this little problem. The reason that my eaves are strange right here is because different slopes have different eave heights, even if their overhang is the same. For example, if we look at this gable, and right now it's at a 912, what happens if I change this to a 2? Watch the fascia. See what's going to happen here. I'm going to change this to a 2, and I don't know if you noticed, but it's much higher than it used to be. Let's make it a 12. That's much lower than it used to be. Again, 2 jumps up, 12 it jumps down. That's because it has more distance to travel at a steeper slope. So when it's 12, it's still coming out only 1 foot, but it's traveling so much further down. It's very steep. When it's 2, it's coming out a foot, but it's not very steep to begin with, so it ends up being up here. Okay, we have a problem. 2 different slopes means 2 different fascias. And that's always something we're going to try to avoid. There's a really cool tool that will fix this. I'm just going to go inside, back to the edit mode by double clicking. and I'll use the Align Eaves tool. And this tells me that all of these eaves are 8 inches below the edge of my wall, whereas this one is 4 inches. And by using this tool, if you look down here, it says select an eave to align to, and then select eaves to be aligned. So if I want them all to be 8 inches, I'll start by clicking here, and then I'll click on the 4, which will drop that down to an 8. And what it really did, if I can hit escape and select this, is it gave this one now a 2-foot overhang instead of the 1 foot, which I had previously. So when I accept, the eaves match up. You can see right off that has a deeper overhang. But what we care about is aligning the fascias. We don't care if it's deeper, we just want the fascias to line up. Okay, so that's the first issue that I want you to be aware of. And then the second one is that sometimes you need a gable, but you don't have the walls to do it. There might not be a protruding wall. And what I mean by that is over here, these are protruding walls. It's really easy to get a gable there. Over here, what if I want a gable right in the middle? Let's go to the front of the house and let's say that we want one right in the middle. Like there's an entryway here. How do I get a gable if I don't have any walls that I can choose to form the slope? And this gable would be in the middle of the wall and it wouldn't extend all the way from side to side. So it's a very small gable. Let me show you how this is done. I'll go back into my roof plan. Here's my gable version. And I'm going to go into edit mode and I'm going to break up this line. I'll use the shortcut SL, which is split or slice, and I'm going to split this roof or the line for the roof on this side in twice so that there's 3 pieces. Okay, this will create slope coming up. This one will create slope coming up. This one I'm going to turn slope off. So there's no longer slope coming up from there. And instead, I'm going to tell it that I want the slope to start here at that corner and here at that corner. And I use this little slope arrow tool. Slope arrow. We'll go find that corner piece and we're going to point upward. We didn't quite do what we wanted yet because if I click on this, it says height at tell for specify. And that's not what I want. I actually want it to be slope. So I'm going to click on that. And then I'm going to do one more on the other side. Slope arrow. Let's make sure that we point it in the right direction and change it to be slope. And what is that actual slope? Right here it says that it's going to be 912. And I think the rest of this roof is 8, so I'm going to change that to an 8 as well as this one. Just double check. Oh, that's a 1212. Well, we'll see what we get. Okay, and now I click accept. And you can see from my plan view that I've got new shapes in there. What did they do exactly? Just what I wanted. I've got a little gable right here in the middle. Okay, one more time just to show you. This is its own distinct line without slope. And the slope arrows do something different. They tell it to start sloping upward at those intersecting points. Okay, it's a little bit tricky to do this, but go ahead and give it a shot. And you'll be able to use that over here in the application. There's a spot on the back that's supposed to have slope and there's no protruding walls. Okay, now good luck. The next video will take you through the rest and everything you need to know in order to do the application portion.